clearly want to thank the panel of speakers who you're going to hear from tonight, and most especially all of you who took time to come out here. You know, this water is kind of a dry subject, no pun intended, but it's hard to get people really interested in this, and so, but it's something that we really do need to face. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm president of the Groundwater District here in Montgomery County. I've been on the board since I was elected in 18. We've come up a really long way. My private life, I'm a consultant. I do management consulting, and I've worked with a lot of companies throughout my life. I'm a dad and a granddad and a great-granddad. How many of y'all have grandchildren? You know why grandparents and grandchildren have such a strong bond? They have a common enemy. But anyway, it really is important, I think, for us to address this, because I have kids and grandkids that want to live in this, the greatest county in the state of Texas. And Texas is probably the greatest state in the nation. And it's really important to me that we pay attention to this stuff. So I'm just a concerned citizen. I'm the president of the Lone Star Board, but I'm not speaking today for the board. I'm speaking today for myself, because I want to be able to say things that I haven't had a chance to really vet with the board and all of that. So I have more questions than I do answers tonight. I don't think you're going to find anybody that gets up here and has answers to our situation in Montgomery County. I think we have a lot of questions, and I think those questions really need to be taken seriously. So I have more of those than I have answers, but I'll get to those in a minute. I think Hank said it, but I want to reinforce it. We have, I believe, a unique opportunity in Montgomery County. One, we're blessed with one of the most prolific aquifers probably in the U.S. And we also are blessed in that we haven't been legislatively put upon to solve our water problems. And we have the opportunity to do something that Montgomery County gets to control, if we're willing to do it. So I think there's a great opportunity for us to take this situation on. So I want to give you a few facts before we get too far along here, so that it kind of frames up the conversation. First, we're not running out of water in Montgomery County. We have more water under this county than we could pump out at the rate we're pumping out in 2,800 years. Now that doesn't mean we can get all of that water, and that doesn't mean that all that water is going to be available because of the way the aquifers work. And I'll talk just a little bit about that in just a minute. But we do have the prolific aquifer. We don't have a supply problem, which means we're not behind the 8 ball to do this. Now, that's sort of a blessing, and it's also a curse, because I don't know what your experience with government has been, but government doesn't usually move until they have to. And so if we wait to solve this problem, not a problem, we wait to meet this challenge, we're not going to have an optimal solution, I can tell you. We don't take this on now, and we can't get the citizens of this county behind pushing to get something started and get it done. We're going to find ourselves in a position of having to do something. And I think that's not the place we really want to be. So a couple other facts I want to talk about, and that is below the county we have 183 million acre feet of water. We're pumping 80,000 a year. They say that we can recover about 25% of that, which is now, if you pump that for 400 years, you'd still have water in the aquifer. The problem we have in Montgomery County is, even though we have a very prolific aquifer, it's not made up, it's not conducive to the water moving through the ground. So it moves really pretty slow. And the problem we have is not that we don't have the water, it's can we get it? And that's why I believe at some point we're going to have some alternative supplies. Because we're not, take Valley Ranch here for an example. that's going to be a very densely populated area. And they don't have access to surface water. So it's going to be groundwater. So how many wells can you put close together in that aquifer and still be able to get the water out? Because the more wells you put, the closer you put them, the harder it is for the water to flow to the well bores. And so what happens is you go deeper. So the longer your well bore is, the more water can get in it. But you're limited by how deep you can go this far south in the county. So it's not that the water's not there, it's whether we can get it or not. And that's why I think that we're going to have some alternative supplies, some way to do that. And there's a ton of different alternative supplies. So one is surface water. We could utilize surface water. We have Lake Conroe over there. We already have, there's water piped already to the woodlands in Conroe. There's also water you can import. So we've got counties surrounding us who are much less densely populated than us, and you probably have landowners over there who'd be happy to sell Montgomery County water. That might be an alternative. Recycling might be an alternative. I don't know what all the alternatives are, but if we don't start looking at those now, what we end up with are pockets in the county that are so populated that they're not going to be able to utilize the groundwater at the rate that it needs to be utilized. So we want to really pay attention to the fact that there are a lot of different alternative methods that we could use, and we need to be thinking about how are we going to use those? How are we going to go about it? Who's going to do that? So some question I have, who's the entity that could take on making sure Montgomery County has an adequate supply of water? I don't think it exists right now. I really don't. I don't know who it would be or even how we would do it, but I know if we don't do it, we could end up like Harris County, where the legislature comes in and does something that doesn't make anybody happy. So we need in Montgomery County to take this problem on ourselves. Let's see. So let's talk about some of the questions that I have. So one question is, if we're going to be limited in the amount of groundwater that we can get out of the ground, how do we protect private property rights? And how do we afford everybody a fair share? So I'm just going to use Valley Ranch because we just drove through there and it looks to me like that's going to be a huge development. So how do we assure that the people at Valley Ranch have the right water supply? How do we assure that those private property rights are respected and that they get their fair share? How do we do that? I don't have all the answers to that, but it's really important because the Texas law says you own the groundwater below your feet, and you're to be afforded a fair share. Well, if the water's not distributed evenly in the county, it's going to be much harder for different places in the county to get their fair share. So how do we take the pressure off the aquifer? What are these alternative supplies that we might be able to utilize to do that? How many wells can the aquifer tolerate in any given spot? So we have what we call dipping aquifers. And so up in northern part of the county, the Catahuma, for example, which is the deepest aquifer, I mean, it's down literally thousands of feet. That aquifer has clean water up in the northern part of the county. When you get down here where we're standing right now, that water is very salty. Can't use it. So how deep can you even go? And even below us a little ways, a little further south, the Jasper gets salty, and you can't use it. So now you've eliminated two of the aquifers that the rest of the county has access to. So how are we going to assure that these people get their fair share the same as the people in the northern part of the county do? So we got to find out how much can we actually take out. Another issue, what do we do about this notion of subsidence? So is that going to limit us? Is that going to limit the amount of groundwater we can take out of the ground? And to be honest with you, we don't have the science. You'll hear from another speaker here in a minute a little bit more about that, but we don't have the science yet to know how much water can we take out of these aquifers without excessive subsidence. And what is excessive subsidence? What is it? Is subsidence really a problem with flooding in Montgomery County? How many of you have ever heard of Brownwood in Baytown? In Brownwood, they were about 10 feet above sea level. And Exxon and all those plants took a tremendous amount of groundwater out of the shallow aquifers, and you got subsidence, and the bay literally encroached on them, those homes. That's what started this whole subsidence thing. But remember, they were 10 feet above sea level. Does anybody know how far above sea level we are in Montgomery County on average?
40 to 50 feet.
How much?
40 to 50 feet.
70.
More than that. I don't know what the average is actually, but I know that it's over 200 feet up where I live. And I don't believe it's 130 feet lower here. I believe we're probably over an average of 100 feet above sea level in this county. We don't have to worry about encroachment here. It's not going to happen. And subsidence doesn't happen in 2-acre spots. The streams sink just like the land sinks. So how big of a problem is subsidence flooding? How much subsidence can we tolerate in exchange for getting cheaper groundwater? Those questions need to be answered. Because for you guys, we want the lowest practical cost for your water and the highest practical use of the best water, which is groundwater. So how do we determine what that is, and how do we know that? How do we know how much of that stuff we can take? It's a question we really need to go, get a handle on. And do we? What about infrastructure? We don't. Nobody is looking at infrastructure for this stuff. And so it's really important, I believe, that you, the citizens, really get interested in this stuff, because it is going to sneak up on us. I don't know about you guys, but I was racing my Roadrunner, seemed like just the other day. And I was 17 years old and chasing girls and skipping school. And all of a sudden, blink, here I am. Tomorrow sneaks up on us extremely fast. And if we don't get behind this and start doing something about it, it's going to be tomorrow. It really is. Let's see here. What else did I want to say? I think that's about all I wanted to. I think that's about all I wanted to put in front of you, but I really do want to urge you guys, and I appreciate y'all all being here, but we need to be talking to our neighbors. This auditorium should have been full, but it's really a hard subject to get people that interested in, unless, like some of us, you were paying $700 a month water bills, and then you get really interested. But the reality is, it's not a burning issue for a lot of people. It will be one day. So thank y'all for coming. I appreciate it, and I'm going to turn it back over to Hank.
So yeah, guys, I know you've been watching the news, and in the past few days, I know that Harris County's been in the news, and people have been complaining about extremely high water bills there. So there's a lot going on in Harris County. We don't want that to encroach in Montgomery County. My next speaker is a wonderful guy. He is the proud founder and president of the Stoecker Corporation. His name is Mike Stoecker. A wealth of knowledge, and honored to have him with us today. Mike Stoecker.
First thing you'll figure out is I am not a public speaker, okay? And I appreciate that, being here. No, I'm just a business guy, and I'm going to tell you, there's always two questions, and y'all know this. What is the problem, and how do you solve it? It's only two questions. And with that in mind, Jim touched on subsidence briefly. I just want to bring up one particular point on subsidence, and I'm going to make all this short. But subsidence, there's an instrument called an excinctometer. I might even be pronouncing it incorrectly, okay? But as a member of the GRP, the Groundwater Board, I am there and I listen to seminars and other educated people. And we've had USGS come up. And since then, we've had several conversations I had with a bunch of people. And I've not found anybody who won't say excinctometers are the golden bar of gauging subsidence. And with that in mind, then my first question is, oh, well, where's the excinctometer science and math at? Because excinctometers have been around since 1951. I remember that date because that's the year I was born. Anyway, so if they've been around that long, and the USGS recognizes it, and again, I have yet to find an engineer who has a much better, higher degree than I ever had to disagree with that. The subsidence can be gauged by excinctometers. So why don't we have one? I don't know, but again, that's the past. Looking forward, what we are going to have to do is figure out how to fund, and when I fund, that means spending money, and I know it, and we're already complaining about how much money we owe now, but we're talking $10 to $15 million to get us some 5 to 7 excinctometers throughout Montgomery County that will gauge it. And instead of having conversations about are we subsiding and not subsiding, looky here, we subsided a foot, all that goes away with these, okay? It's science, it's math, it's no longer personalities, it's no longer I like this better than I like that. So all I'm saying is that that's one of the planning tools that should have been, and it doesn't matter why now, but needs to be put in the bag to resolve what could be potential future issues. And so I'm just going to say that we're pushing right now to get some funding from somewhere to put some excinctometers in the ground. But if you assume this problem we have today of not agreeing on how to handle the water situation in Montgomery County, a certain percentage of it, even if it's a small percentage of the, for example, $560 million in bonds that are floated, you can hear me say that $10 to $15 million, and you take out the subsidence question. Therefore, you go, wow, that's a pretty good buy. So, if somebody is of a different opinion after this is over with, please inform me. But otherwise, I feel pretty confident standing up here saying those are the tools that we need to figure out how to fund that will answer whatever percentage of the problem here in Montgomery County is with water having to do with subsidence. That is the answer, that is the gold bar. The other thing is, being a real estate developer as well as an investor-owned utility owner, we pay attention to what is called the Housing Affordability Index. And let me tell you, Montgomery County has had very good luck over the years being able to, our average citizen being able to afford a home. As we all now know, due to inflation, due to higher interest rates, due to high land prices, due to demand, and there's a lot of reasons, then the affordability index is not looking near as good. It was 1.3, 1.4, now it's slightly below 1. In other words, half the population cannot afford the average home price in Montgomery County now. That is not good. Give you an example, maybe it's, I could throw California out here, they're always easy to throw under the bus, you know. But 73%, I was told earlier today, of the population of California can't afford a single family home. And that's what I'm talking about. So how does that relate to water? Well, it's wise use of our money, okay? And again, I'm in the business, so sometimes you got to prime the pump to get the right answer, to do the right job, to do it correctly. With that in mind, that again, subsidence and excinctometers are part of the answer. But also structuring whatever we structure so that we in fact end up with the most cost-effective manner. Now you mentioned $700 water bill. Well, I got to tell you, he's got a $700 water bill, I don't feel sorry for you, okay? But I'm gonna tell you, the average Joe, the guy that gets up, comes clean your yard, people who wait on you when you go to those nice restaurants, those are the ones we gotta look out for, okay? So with that in mind, then we have to watch out for the housing affordability index, of which, by the way, your water bill is one of the many bills that goes into the box or the barrel to go figure out what you can afford every month. And some of them is as little as $30 more per month than what the real water bill is, okay? And I'm talking about the difference between your water bill from the city or from an investor-owned utility and then the SGRA rate. I'm not here to talk bad about the SGRA, I'm just here that that's a source of a tax, if you will. And with that in mind, then we need to forever keep an eye on that, because as little as $30, but the average being $50, $60, $70 a month means something to half of our population, okay? And so just think, if we were able to do that in the most cost-effective manner, whether we do it 25% less, 50% less, pick a number, wise use of assets, meaning think of the teachers we could hire, think of the education we could give for millions and millions of dollars. So it's important to have these discussions about water bill when, and I realize a lot of people, you might say, cuss their water bill every month when they get it, but then they don't pay any attention to it. Why? Because most of them are trying to get up and go to work and pay the bills, okay? And that's the reason why, but they are concerned. And if people have an opportunity to do something about it, like y'all here in this room who care enough to show up, then you're helping those kind of folks out a lot. So again, what's the problem and how do you solve it? That's the only two questions. And again, I stand by and would be happy to listen to anybody disagree with me anytime about extentometer being the answer to solve the science and the math and not opinions, okay, when it comes to subsidence, okay? And that's really about all I got. And I appreciate y'all's time.
All right, guys, our next speaker couldn't make it this evening. But the great part about it is we did get an opportunity to put together a video presentation that will be played on the monitors. He is the owner of a private water company, a water company that services the needs of many subdivisions and individuals. He has a unique perspective on water in Montgomery County, and his name is Simon Sequeira. So if you could please run that for him.
Hello, my name is Simon Sequeira. I'm the CEO of Quadvest. Today I want to talk to everybody about the future of water in Montgomery County. And I want to explain a little bit of how Quadvest fits into the overall role. I want to talk about longevity and where I see water headed for Montgomery County residents in the future. I think there are a lot of things at play in Montgomery County related to water. One of the most important things that we need to consider is the growth of the county. Montgomery County, like everyone knows, is booming. A lot of people moving here, and I think there's always going to be a demand on resources. And one of the things that we've worked on in Montgomery County for over 45 years, Quadvest has been a provider of water to subdivisions and schools and all types of businesses. From my grandfather to my father to myself, and we're a multi-generational family-owned business. Family's been in Montgomery County since the 1860s, and we hope we have a long future in Montgomery County. One of our challenges is how do we plan for the future, and it's real easy to get caught up in what's best for today. It's easy to be short-sighted on infrastructure, all types of infrastructure, and water is no different. And so it is certainly true that we need to plan for the future, and we need to think about where we're going to get our water, how are we going to move our water around, who's going to be responsible for that. And there are a lot of things that play, and I think most people have heard about some of the water challenges in Montgomery County. Some of it is real, some of it is exaggerated, some of it is related to, frankly, just the government intervention. And it's not that we don't need government involved. We do need government involved. We do need some type of government help. But sometimes it can be a little bit overbearing and cause some unneeded problems for residents in Montgomery County. We have historically relied on groundwater in Montgomery County, and we will always rely on groundwater in Montgomery County. So we don't want to ever think about, one day we're going to abandon groundwater and either pipe water into Montgomery County from somewhere else, or use surface water, or something like that. Conjunctive water use is what's best for the people of Montgomery County going forward. Conjunctive water use means a combination of resources. It might be reuse, and people don't like to hear the term reuse, but reuse is recycled wastewater. And we do have that in Texas. We've not done that in Montgomery County. Maybe we'll do that one day. Probably won't be allowed to see that, but we might be doing that one day. But collectively, as the community grows, we need to be prepared to serve the residents with the best, most efficient, safest, most longevity water sources as possible. And so we've had some challenges in the past, and we're still working through those issues. These legal battles and fights over water and surface water and who gets what and who provides it, I believe we'll put that past us, hopefully in the next couple years. We are working very hard with all the players to try to resolve this in an amicable way. And we're very concerned about the future of the water supply. Lake Conroe is part of the future water supply in Montgomery County. We don't want to destroy that. We don't want to lose our rights to that. Maybe we don't need it today. Maybe we will need that at some point in the future. And so there are a lot of dynamics at play that it's a very delicate situation, and we're working our way through it. And when I say we, that's Quadvest, and that's other water providers and municipalities and the SJRA and the Lone Star Groundwater District. There's a concerted group of people that are working to resolve the issue. It's not easy. We probably all have a little bit different interests. We're aligned on some things. And of course there's legal issues that we have to work through, but I can assure you that there are some smart, talented people that are working to resolve this issue, and hopefully we get that resolved soon, so we can be better prepared for the future. So let's talk about how the future may work out for everyone in Montgomery County. And for those of you who don't know how the aquifer is regulated, the way the aquifer has been regulated historically in Montgomery County and surrounding counties is it is regulated based on political boundaries. And what that means is, for example, the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District is responsible for the groundwater regulations in Montgomery County. It's almost as if we live in planet Montgomery County and there's nothing else in the world. But that's not how our aquifers work. Our aquifers overlay multiple counties, and we've always said you cannot regulate an aquifer based on political boundaries. You can only regulate an aquifer based on aquifer boundaries. It makes a lot of sense. Lone Star has been working hard to resolve some of these issues. It's a challenge because it's not the way the state has set up regulations. And so every year we're at the legislature trying to educate policymakers and politicians on what we think is the best way for everyone. And this isn't best for Quadvest or best for the SJRA or Houston. It's really about, if we want to manage our aquifers in a way that protects them for the future, we should do it in a holistic way. Saying that Harris County can take out X amount of water from the aquifer in Harris County and Montgomery County gets a different number, but it's all the same, doesn't make much sense. And then we have counties, like Liberty County, for example, who has no groundwater districts, which means you can pump all the water you want in Liberty County and no one can do anything about it. Same aquifer. And so these are the kind of challenges that we have that are facing us, and trying to educate people. There's a different way to do this. There's a better way to do this. Certainly very entrenched bureaucracies around this. They're not necessarily trying to hurt people in Montgomery County or people in Waller County. It's just the way that things have been done forever and ever and ever, and to try to get people to change their way of thinking is always a challenge. So that's one of the huge hurdles that we have. I think it is overcomable. We've made a little bit of progress on that in the past. As a private water company, it's not necessarily about what's good for us. It's about what's good for the community. It merely makes no difference to us from the way we do business. If we were to regulate an aquifer in a holistic way, everyone that pumps water out of that aquifer would be treated the same. We would know, what the deal is. How do we do this? When do we start to convert surface water? Not some of us, all of us. And I think it gives everyone a better perspective on how to plan for the future. That helps maintain, lower costs to the customers. So it's really better for everybody. One of the other challenges that we have is related to surface water. And Lake Conroe was built as a surface water lake, and that's just what it was for. And I know a lot of people don't like that. It's a huge tax base in Montgomery County. It's a beautiful lake, but it certainly was built for water supply. And as demand increases one day, I don't know when, I don't know if it's next year or 20 years from now, there's going to be more and more pressure on that lake, on that resource, for drinking water. And how do we do that? How do we manage that? Do people still want to live on Lake Conroe in the middle of a drought when the lake's been sucked down 10 feet to supply drinking water? That's a challenge that we have. We also have Lake Livingston, that's part of the regional surface water system. And the city of Houston is already using that to bring water into Houston. So there are a lot of dynamics at play. I don't want anyone to ever get the sense or the fear that we're going to run out of water. Nothing is further from the truth. That's just not going to happen. We have a lot of groundwater. There are a lot of resources around us. We're in a water-rich part of the state. That's great for us. We just have to be smarter about how we regulate water. The kind of people that we put in charge, these types of regulations can do a lot of harm if we're not watching and we're not paying attention. That's a little bit about why we're in the struggle that we're in now. Is a lot of us, myself included, may not have been paying attention like we should. So I certainly encourage everybody to pay attention to what's going on. When you see your water bill in the summertime and it's double or triple the amount, people they get upset, rightfully so. But there's a lot of other things that go on behind the scenes, and just because your water bill goes down to a normal rate in January doesn't mean that things aren't happening and things aren't going on. They are. I would encourage everybody to pay attention to local regulations, Lone Star Groundwater, San Jacinto River Authority, what municipalities are doing, because it all matters. It all really hits home to us one way or another. Thank you, and I appreciate you listening.
All right, so do y'all guys feel like you're learning anything yet about the aquifer, about water in Montgomery County? Next up, I have Harry Hardman. He is a city councilman for the city of Conroe, and I wanted to get the perspective of one of our local cities because I thought it was important to hear what these guys' challenges are and how they plan on working toward the future. So if you'll all welcome him aboard, I appreciate it. Harry Hardman.
Good evening, everyone. It's a real challenge being forth especially after Jim Spigener. Anytime you go after Jim, it's a challenge, and Simon. So there's a lot that's been covered. As Hank said, my name is Harry Hardman. I am on the city council for the city of Conroe, and interestingly, I am the past president of Lone Star Groundwater District, and I also served on several mud boards previously to that. So water's been an issue for me for quite a long time. Mark Twain said it best. Whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, especially in Texas and predominantly in Montgomery County, so that's been an issue for us for quite a while. But, you know, that's an issue that is not going to go away, and I'm certainly not going to talk about the fights. It's something that's been going on for a while, but it is a challenge, and it's one that's we're faced with today, and it's only going to continue to get a bigger one because Conroe in itself has been one of the 10 fastest growing cities in the country for a number of years. We've experienced hypergrowth, I think 6 times in the last 10 years, and that's not expected to diminish anytime soon. I just got, and I see Commissioner Gray's here, and you can keep me honest on this. I just got some numbers from our office that in 2060, Montgomery County is expected to grow about 1.5 times to a population of about 1.4 million. In 2060, and I think we're about 650,000 today, a little over, around 600 something. So people, you know, the problem with a good thing is people understand it's a good thing, and people are continuing to come into Montgomery County. That's good. And so the challenge is how do we cost effectively meet that demand? You know, Mike talked about the affordability index. There's a lot to the water. There's the infrastructure. There's roads. There's bridges. There's sewer. There's all types of things from the county perspective, from the city perspective. So there's a lot that goes into this. We have to plan holistically. One of the challenges that I think every community faces is just not being aware. I mean, there's no shallow end in groundwater. You've heard a lot of things, you know, thrown at you today: subsidence, acre feet. All types of things that if you're in this thing every day, you tend to talk into, you know, a lot of things that make a lot of sense to us. But if you're just a normal citizen, your eyes start rolling in the back of your head very quickly. An educated consumer is the most effective weapon that we can have in Montgomery County. And I'm telling you that the thing that we have to do as a community, and this has to be at the county level, whether you are a private citizen with a 4 or 5 acre piece of land on a private well, or you live in a city or anything else. The only way that we're going to be able to continue to effectively keep the future in our own hands and keep Austin from dictating what's going to happen to us as they did in Harris County is by us taking a much more proactive stance in how we look at solving this issue, not 5 years down the road, not 10 years down the road, but 40 or 50 years down the road. And if we can do this as a community, and it's got to be at the county level, because Conroe has its own unique challenges. We're one of the few people that do have conjunctive use. We use about 65% on an average, 65% groundwater, 35% surface water. We're one of the people that do have access to surface water. It's a seasonal thing. Right now, we use 80% groundwater. In the summertime, it's a little bit of a mixture. We use about 12,000 acre feet. We pump about 3 billion gallons. We have about a little over 100,000 people in Conroe today. So we can continue, we will continue to use groundwater. That will be a significant percentage of our overall utilization. But wells are expensive. They're over $2 million now, depending on what type of well it is. It can be $5 to $10 million. So there's no easy fix to these things. Everything costs a lot of money. So we have to be thoughtful about where do we make these investments? How do we make these investments? To what level? What's the rate of return on these types of things? And to the extent that we can get everybody aware of the challenges. And there's going to be, I think, if you look at what Montgomery County is going to be, the way it's going to look like in 25 or 50 years, not every part of the county is going to need or justify surface water. But some of these key areas that have the hypergrowth, if you look down the I-45 corridor, maybe in other parts of the county that are seeing significant growth, having that conjunctive use, whatever that looks like, as Simon said, maybe reuse of water, maybe desalinization is going to be becoming affordable enough. I mean, think about fracking. Who would have thought 20 years ago? Technology continues to evolve. Maybe surface water in other places. Having different methodologies and different types of solutions are going to help augment the utilization of groundwater so that we're not just sucking it dry. Because as Jim alluded to, we have all the water we need, but just how effectively we use it, if we can not overpump in certain areas, it's going to allow it to regenerate and keep it at usable levels, so we can offset that in key areas where we're seeing that growth. It's going to allow those aquifers to regenerate at a much better level, and I think that's where we're going to see that yin and yang really play. I think the biggest challenge that we're seeing ourselves in, and it's cost us millions of dollars, not only hundreds of millions of dollars and millions of dollars to litigate, is that these decisions were made by a very few people in a vacuum. And we cannot allow that to happen again. We need to be very much part of this next generation of decision making, because it affects every single one of us. So again, educated consumers are the most effective weapon that we have. We need to make the time and the energy to understand the issues, understand the challenges, tell your neighbors, and as we make these decisions, long-term support or challenge, your councilmen, your elected officials, especially the president of the groundwater district, give him a lot of hard time, and make sure that we're doing this in the right way. Because I guarantee you, if we don't take the mantle ourselves and take care of Montgomery County's groundwater issues, Austin will do it for us. And I don't want that to happen. So that's really all I have. Thank you.
Okay, our final speaker for the evening, well actually not the final, but close to the final, Webb Melder. He is the former mayor of Conroe, and this guy was in the trenches with this problem long ago, way before a lot of us even knew there were issues with water in Montgomery County. Recently visited the city of Conroe, and Webb took me aside and showed me his law library that he's put together. Well, all of the research that he's done on water, on law, and it was quite impressive. We had a really good conversation. So I'm really glad to have him here. I think he's got some valuable knowledge. And next up, Webb Melder.
Thank you, Hank. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and appreciate appreciate everyone being here tonight. I don't know how I got chosen to bring up the end of this discussion, because everyone here tonight has made some outstanding and important comments. It's going to be a hard act to follow. I'd like to say that what I'm going to try to do in a few short minutes is plant a visionary seed. I'll repeat that. Plant a visionary seed. When you leave here tonight, hold on to it. As it's been mentioned with all of our speakers here tonight, share it with your neighbors. We're all blessed to live in one of the greatest counties in the state, one of the greatest counties in this country, one of the fastest growing counties in this country. And we do have challenges in the future. That's where the visionary seed thought comes about. Now, I'm no spring chicken, and I won't be here when that visionary seed blooms one day. But some of you folks will be. And some of you folks, I hope, will be involved in seeing these thoughts and these visions come together. And the way this is going to be accomplished is the county, I think Simon mentioned holistically, people in Montgomery County are going to have to set aside biased politics, selfish interest, and do what's best for the county. It's already been stated that certain parts of the county may get more surface water than others. Certain parts of the county may get more groundwater than others. That's where clear thinking and being humble and doing what's right comes into play. The resources are out there. They've all been identified tonight. When I say a visionary seed, this part of Montgomery County, you got Lake Houston right over here, you got Lake Livingston right up there. In the drought of the 50s, anybody here old enough to remember that? I know I am. There may be a few others. But they woke up one day and said, you know, this can happen again. And Houston's dynamic, growing city, and we need water. And what did they do? The leadership of the city of Houston, they built Lake Livingston. They built Lake Conroe. And that's what these gentlemen and Simon here tonight, and what we're trying to say when we say plant a visionary seed. Montgomery County needs to look at this and look out in the future and look at our natural resources and how we can best obtain those and make them available to our citizens in the most economic way possible. And I think one thing that all of these gentlemen here and Simon, and I believe y'all too, if it involves bonded debt, let the people vote on it. Anybody got a problem with that? I mean, that's paramount. And when it comes to water, I trust that the good people of Montgomery County will make the right decision. Here's a few projects going on today that you may or may not be aware of. People who were visionary because they had a need. Some of them got out in front of it. Some of them got visionary when it was, hey, we got to do something. Councilman Harry Hardman from El Paso. El Paso looked up one day and said, we need water. And they put together a desalination plant, one of the most successful in the country. San Antonio San Antonio, whatever you say. Hey, we're not gonna grow this city if we don't have some water. So what do? Visionary. They get together with some people and they put together the Vista Ridge pipeline, and what is that, 180 miles?
140.
140 miles of pipeline. And they go out and they leased up groundwater rights. Jim was talking about private property rights. That's a constitutional right. Don't ever give it up. But they did it the right way. If all of you own land out there in Robertson and Milam and Lee counties and others, they came to you and said, we'd like to talk to you about leasing your groundwater, just like they do with your oil and gas. It was an honest, straight up, clear, defined business approach. No hidden agendas. And they're pumping billions of gallons of groundwater all the way to San Antonio. I don't know if that'll happen here in Montgomery County, but it's on the list of things to consider. Brownsville, years ago, the valley, the Texas Valley that we all know, had a water problem. They got together, the cities got together, people came together out of a common need and had a vision and put in a desalination plant, hugely successful. The city of Los Angeles has put in a desalination plant, hugely successful. Where do we go from here? None of us up here, we've all said, we don't know. We just know it's coming. We need to have our eyes open. And we need to have a feeling of togetherness that yes, we can work together for the betterment of the entire county. And that's pretty much where I'm going to stop right there. I have trust, again, that the good people of Montgomery County, given the opportunity, not government mandated, will step up, and that includes you people here in this room tonight, and I thank you all for coming, and I thank Hank for putting this symposium on. Thank you very much.
Okay, next what I'd like to do is open this up for just a short Q&A. Does anybody out there have any questions for any of the panelists regarding water? And remember guys, no question's a stupid question. You should have heard me when I first started trying to determine what's going on with water in Montgomery County. I asked the worst questions that could ever be asked, questions that didn't even have to do with water. So if anybody's got anything, I'd be more than happy to listen to it. And Jackie will bring you a mic. Anyone? Just raise your hand.
I'd like to know what, I'm Floyd Jackson. I would like to know what our elected officials are doing, instead of us just handling this by ourselves. And I also want to say that if we want to get the elected officials involved, we need to get them involved in what we're doing and bring it up and make it a part. You know, just get it right out in front of them and make them get a part of this too. I don't know what they're doing. I'm asking the question. I don't know. Maybe they're doing a lot, maybe they're not.
Appreciate that question, Mr. Jackson. Jim Spigener, would you like to take that? Yeah, we've recently had some stuff happen, so he can fill you in on that.
Well, our contingent here in Montgomery County, we're fortunate to have. They have done a tremendous job supporting us so far in everything we do. We haven't asked them to get involved yet because we don't know exactly how to go about this. Do we want to, do we need legislative help to do this? We don't know. I know this, we would love to have the county officials, all of our commissioners and people like that. We really would love to have them involved in this, to to take an active interest in this. So far, the way regulation has occurred in Montgomery County is we did get an elected Lone Star board. So Lone Star was an appointed board at one time. It's now elected. We're trying to regulate the groundwater side of this and do the kind of things that Mike Stoecker talked about. Get the science so that we can tell how much groundwater is really going to be available to us. But once again, I don't think for the long term we can depend on that. I think we're going to have, as Simon said, and as Harry and Mike said, conjunctive use. Meaning we're going to have different agencies that are going to have to play together. And I think without having our elected officials really involved, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We'll just run off the cliff and then we'll do something that's not optimal. So the reason we're having this is we want to plant the seed. We want our elected officials involved. We think that they have the power, if you will, for us to handle this locally. And we want them involved. So we're an elected board at Lone Star. I can tell you that Conroe's all in on this kind of stuff. I believe all of our municipalities are concerned. I know Magnolia is. They're concerned about this, but somebody's got to decide to take this on. And I don't know who that is. I wish I had that answer, and I don't know exactly how to do it, but we have some really smart elected officials. And I believe putting them together or having them help us figure out how to put this together, we could come up with a strategy for doing this. Because what we need is an overall strategy. Having all these little independent entities out running around doing their things is not going to solve the big infrastructure, sustainability, long-term water use problems. It's just not going to happen. So we want them involved. But right now, to be straight up honest with you, I think the level of involvement is way below what it needs to be. It's just not on their radar screen, I don't think. Anybody else in the panel?
I appreciate this very much, and I know we got a commissioner to work with you.
I guarantee you we do.
I'm gonna go ahead and stand up and address it since I'm so close to the question. I felt a little personal about it. So it is a big underlying deal, and for me, sustainable construction or sustainable look ahead for a person in an elected position such as myself is looking 2 generations ahead. So that's when you're putting straws in the ground, when you're putting structure on the ground for mobility, or working on drainage projects. You're looking out as far as you can. So you're pulling surface water to the west of us here. You're pulling surface water to the southeast of us. And so we're growing at an unprecedented rate, and it's all these muds popping up, and it's pulling water out of the ground. We just heard about all these aquifers. So we hear about Brownwood, you hear about over around Jersey City, and you hear about subsidence, and then you hear about not subsidence, and you don't know what side to be on it politically or what the situation is. But I can tell you, as your commissioner, I believe in numbers and mathematics and science and facts and figures. So what we are doing is we're setting monuments around this precinct. So if there is actually subsidence, so we do have issues, in a couple generations or 20 years or whatever, we will have numbers to calculate off of. So a monument is a disc that's just set to take an elevation off of. And that's what we're doing. And not only does that, it serves as something else for when you're doing a development, instead of taking a digital reading to get your elevation and where you're going to build off of. We've got actual monuments which have been set by professionals, and you've got base pins around the county. Well, I can't speak for the county, but for the precinct, that's what we're doing. So I applaud you gentlemen for getting up saying that, and I want you to know you do have a forward-thinking commissioner, and we are trying to plan for the future. I'm trying to plan for the future with those monuments and, the topic we're discussing. So thanks for asking that, Floyd.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. The problem we have is the monuments don't tell us which aquifer is affecting the subsidence. Back to Mike's thing about extensometers, we need extensometers. We need to find a way to fund those because we just don't know. We know the ground's moving, nobody's gonna argue about that. Which aquifer's causing that? We have no idea. So we need these extensometers and we need the coring samples. But we also need forward-thinking commissioners. I appreciate you being here, I really do. Thank you, sir.
He's gonna want you to stay up here.
What?
Stay up there.
Oh,
Name's Darrell Palmer. I'm precinct chair out of Kingwood. Also was hugely active and worked with a number of public officials during the flooding in 17 and 19. So I've been pretty much a student of surface water movement, surface water. Now, I have one question for the second gentleman that spoke. Your extentometers, when you initiate or set one of those, does it establish a baseline for you to go from when you install one of those?
One of the statements I made was that, maybe I didn't say it quite like this, I'm not exactly a physicist or geologist either one, but my understanding is
However you add it up, if it's designed correctly, to your point, I believe, the extentometers give you each aquifer and how much each one of them is subsiding. And that's the big picture of what I know, and therefore, again, USGS is the one who stood up, basically said they're the gold bar. And I've, again, not had anybody, including SJRA or anybody else, say that that's not true. They agree that the extentometers, if designed correctly, will give you all your answers you're talking about, and then some.
Okay, well, that'll lead into two questions.
Can
How many aquifers
I speak to that before we go any further? So, first off, an extensometer is going to take several years to give us meaningful data, right? So putting one in the ground right now is not going to tell us what we need to know right now. What we're doing though at Lone Star is we're taking coring samples. So the SJRA is helping us with a site so we can get coring samples, so we can tell, we send those cores off to the lab and they tell us how much compaction you're going to have if you take groundwater. So that gives us the baseline you were talking about. And once we've got that baseline, then we can tell, gosh, the subsidence that's happened has been caused mostly by the Evangeline and the Chico. We can see that. We can also see that, look, the Jasper maybe or maybe not, we don't know, we got to wait on the data, it's already compacted. It's not going to compact anymore. So you can take more water out of it without lowering the ground level, the monuments that Matt's talking about. Or maybe it will compact, we don't know. Whichever way it goes, that's what we're going to pay attention to, the science. But we got to have both. We got to have coring samples and we got to have extensometers if we're going to manage the subsidence issue.
Fair enough. My question after he answered the first one was, okay, you have the point we're at now, you have the point 20 years from now. There's going to be something measuring the aquifer depth, width, thickness, whatever you want to call it, and the actual ground elevation.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's not really going to matter which aquifer is going down or not. It's going to matter how much the elevation is dropping, and that can be done now through satellite very accurately. So my question is this, just a minute.
Okay.
Why use 50-year-old or technology from the 50s when we have, or what's going to cost $15 million extra, when we have that technology now, satellite-based?
Well, here's the problem. If you're going to decide where you're going to take the groundwater, you've got to know which aquifer compacts and which doesn't. So do you give more permits in the Evangeline if it compacts? The answer to that's no. You move people to the Jasper aquifer if it doesn't compact. So you stop that. We got to know which ones, because we can't get off of groundwater tomorrow. In fact, the Harris County's not off of groundwater. They're still pumping in the neighborhood of 4 times the amount of groundwater Montgomery County is. And they've got a 0. Their goal is to get to 0. But the reality is, because of right now, the lack of population across Montgomery County, we're going to be dependent on groundwater for a long time. Let's take the groundwater from the place where it's gonna cause the least amount of movement on the surface. So we've got to get beyond just having the satellite data. We already know that the ground is moving down some. We know that, but why? Which aquifer is causing that? We don't know that yet. And this is the data we're looking for to tell us this, so we can move our regulations to lessen the ground movement. That's what the goal is. So how much groundwater can we take out of any aquifer with the least amount of ground movement? Because it doesn't matter, as you said, which aquifer's compacting. In the end, if the surface moves, you've got subsidence. But what we want to do is say, we got to take groundwater. We don't have any choice. We got to live on it. So if we do, where do we get the minimal negative impact? And that's where we want to move our regulation to. We think that makes a lot of sense. So that's what our goal is. Sorry, here.
And the other thing too, we have to have more than one. You have to have multiple locations throughout the county because, you know.
That's $15 million a pop.
No, that's all together.
Because you could have thousands of locations using satellite base as opposed to.
And it's not an either or, it's both, right? But so the exosometers are what, 1 to 2 million?
3 million apiece.
About 3 million. So we're talking about maybe 5 to 6 in different parts of the county.
So $20 million.
All in, depending. But this is the way to get again, because the satellite will tell you, yes, this has gone down. It's gone down 1.5 feet. It's gone down 18 inches. It's gone down to it can tell you to a very small level, but it doesn't tell you why. And that's the subjectivity of this whole issue is what people have been fighting about. So if you look at Southeast County, the Woodlands, Southeast County, it's much more subjective to it. The further north you go, the less it's subjective to it because of the hydrogeological way it goes. So if we're going to manage to a county level, we have to find out what's the average. And so if we know that there's certain areas of the county that are more susceptible to this, then we manage that a little bit differently than we would where places that aren't going to have it. And if we have the utility that everybody agrees is the gold standard, then it takes all of the opinion out of it, and we're using the data, not my preferred data or your preferred data, it's the. So that's what we're trying to establish, because people have been fighting about my data says or your data says for quite a while. And that's what the thing we're trying to do.
That's kind of strange you're talking about these exonometers or whatever you call them. Because 4 or 5 years ago, nobody knew jack crap. I went to, this is not the first meeting I've had about water. And 5 years ago, nobody knew anything about the depth of the aquifers. Nobody knew, they knew the Jasper aquifer, which extends down into Harris County. And that's the only one I heard of. That's the only one that was brought up. There wasn't 2 other aquifers up in this area. And so what has changed in the last 5 years? And now you have all this data.
We don't have the data. We don't. We have what
Then how do you know this exonometer is going to give you the data you need?
Because it measures compaction. So it will tell us when you take the groundwater out,
I got that.
does this aquifer actually compact?
But okay, at the end of the day, it's going to be what the politicians decide anyway as to how much water they're going to take out, regardless of what the data, what the research says.
Not so.
Really?
We're the Lone Stars right now when it comes to groundwater. We're the politicians.
Well, when somebody comes in
And we're
starts
getting the
paying
science.
money,
Well,
then that's what's going to
not
happen.
true. They don't. Nobody tells us. We don't. Nobody comes to us and tells us what to do.
Daryl, thank you for your question. I appreciate it. I think we just need to move forward a little bit though. Next question.
Hi, Gary Watts, and I want to thank you for putting this symposium on tonight. This is very good information from multiple sources, and I want to specifically thank Webb Melder, because he was kicking butt 8-10 years ago with TML when we were all involved in the county. He was like that. He started at the bottom and worked his way up. What I wanted to know is who's in charge? You addressed this earlier. You got SJR, you got Lone Star, you got the water board, you've got TCEQ, you've got, a referendum was just passed in November about another water board. And by the way, I voted no, because I didn't know what the heck they were gonna do. There wasn't a description in there. We already had a water board in Austin. So, I say this in jest, every time I want to get somebody in charge, I call a company up, you want a decision made, I get a clerk. And I will tell you this, anytime you talk to a clerk, you deserve the answer you got. So over here, I'm trying to figure out who's in charge, because I want to help and support, and I know that all of you have a hand in it, but like you, Mr. Sprigg, you said, we got to find somebody to take the bull by the horn in so many words. That's what I'm looking for.
For the county.
The county. The county is an overlay. Okay? And we're all in the county. Who's in charge?
And I think that's a great question. That's actually why we're here. So we're here to plant the seed for maybe the formation of who will eventually be in charge. We need to look at that too. We can't all go at it like the Wild West, where everybody just does what they want. Agreed? So we do need to find some sort of commission, consortium, authority, whatever label you'd like to place on it. That's one of the things that we need to do. There's several things we need to do, but that's one for sure. And that was the overall reason why I wanted to put this together. So I want to plant the seed in the folks' minds in Montgomery County that we've got to do something, but we don't have anyone in charge right now. We need to create that somehow.
Well, for your first time out of the box, you guys did a great job.
Thank you very much. We have another question, Jack?
I don't know, I am going to ask a question of everyone in the room first, but for hundreds of years, many of you probably had your own wells in your yards, right? Did they last? Did have your wells gone away? They floated away. So the thing is with wells, right? For hundreds of years in Montgomery County, people put the straw in the ground and start pulling water out of the ground, right? And eventually that well stops working. And what do people do? They get another straw out and they go deeper and get more water. So the compaction you're talking about is a big deal, right? As a mud director, we're dealing with that situation. And it's a big deal. We financed a well for 30 years on a bond. We're not sure the well's going to last that long. Okay? So my question to the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District is, you regulate, I'm assuming, and I'm not certain exactly what y'all do in this regard, but you do oversee all of the straws that go in the ground. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you keep data on those straws so that when that well is reduced in capacity of water coming out of the ground or dries up, and you got to go get another well, do you keep track of that data, and do you have that data?
We do. So what you're talking about is drawdown.
Yes.
Now, you could be talking about a well just failing because it's old and whatever. Right. So that's one reason wells fail. But let's assume what you're talking about is there are multiple straws in the ground that weren't there when you drilled that well. And therefore, the drawdown, in other words, the cone of the depression of pressure is wide, and so the pressure, the artesian pressure that the aquifer has is gone away, basically. Meaning that it's harder for the water to flow into your wellbore. The well's too shallow, so now I've got to drill that well another 100 feet deep so that I've got more area for water to run into it. Now I've got enough water running into the bore again that the pump can pick up suction and pump it to the top. I actually have to increase my horsepower, right? The problem we have is that at some point you run out of depth, right? Because you get down, so in this part of the county, you don't have to get down as far before you hit salty water. Right. So the way Lone Star regulates right now is, and we just got these rules put in place in 2020, we just are in the process of doing an update on them, but the way we regulate is by spacing. So if you want a well, drill a well, I don't care where you're going to drill it. First thing you got to figure out is how many wells are around you that you're going to impact, and how big is your well, And how many gallons per minute are you gonna try to pull out of the ground? And what impact's that gonna have on them? Because we gotta protect them also. So we say to you, okay, if you wanna drill a well in the Evangeline or Chico aquifer, for every gallon per minute that you wanna pull out of the ground, you gotta have 2 feet of spacing between the next well. So if you want 500 gallons, you gotta have 1,000 feet. Can't be a well within 1,000 feet, nearly a quarter of a mile of that well. Okay? If you want to go to the Jasper, then you can do it in 1.5 feet. And if you want to go to the Catahoula, you can do it in 1 foot because there's no, or you can go deeper. So let's assume that you're in the Evangeline aquifer and there are 2 homeowners that have wells within 300 feet of you, and you need a 350 gallon a minute well. The only way you're going to get a permit for that well is to either move your well further or go deeper.
I'm not talking about those kind of wells. I'm talking about mud district wells that are.
But a mud district well is no different.
I get it.
But we permit them no different than anyone else because there's still wells around your well.
So you're saying you have data on all the wells that have been put in since your board?
We do. Every registered well, non-exempt well in Montgomery County, we know how much it's supposed to be producing.
Right.
And we know whether it's still in use or not in use, whether it's failed, and whether you want a permit for a new one.
Is anybody tracking the data of those wells today? Because our wells, for instance, get checked about every quarter or at least twice a year.
Yeah, well, we'd like for you to read it every month, but we'd love to have that data every month. But my point is,
they have an idea.
We try to stay on top of that. Our limitation when we got into office was everything was done manually.
Right, but if you were tracking the wells, you could actually get an idea of what's happening across all of Montgomery County.
We're doing drawdowns.
So is the aquifer drawn? How much has it drawn down over the last 2 droughts?
So for the last at least data that we have a goal of keeping the aquifer in 2080 at 70% of the existing drawdown. So if you look at the levels in the wells in 2016, and then you go out to 2080, 70% of that level still has to be there. You see what I'm saying? So whatever the static level in those wells were, the static level can't have decreased more than 30%. That's our DFC.
Right.
All right, we're at 95%, over 95% right now.
You're saying Montgomery County is at 95%?
Montgomery County's drawdown
right.
is above 95% of the existing drawdown left. So we have made a minimal, I mean super minimal impact on well drawdown in the county.
Even this summer?
Huh?
Even this summer?
Even this past summer?
Yeah. In fact, we gave everybody extra water because in the drought, because we know you need to pump more, but we're keeping track of those. We've got a scattering of wells all across the county. We average those. We don't average them on a day, like a month in the summer, so you will get some fluctuations, but across time, what is it averaging? What is it actually averaging? And we have statistical data that shows us that we're still above 95% of the existing drawdown.
So can I ask you to do something?
Yeah.
In the zip code 77386, which is Bender's Landing all along Rayford Road.
Yep.
Can you look at the wells in that area and get data and tell me that you have 95%? Because I live in the middle of it.
We don't look at every well. We've got monitoring wells. We have several wells, probably, I don't know how many.
Yeah, but you just told me you were monitoring the water wells that the mud districts are using, because that's the ones I'm
Some of those are mud wells, but what we're looking for are wells where we can get a good reading and they're good, and we've got an across the county look at it. So we're not looking, so you may get more drawdown out of 2 wells over here, because when the old regulations were put in place, they were really close to each other. So you could have a well or 2 that's out of that number, but when you do all of the monitoring wells that we have in Montgomery County, you end up above 95% of the existing drawdown.
Give me a picture of what a monitoring well looks like.
It could be somebody's water well, some mud district's water well that we can monitor, that we can get a look at. It could be a monitoring well that was actually drilled as a monitoring well. It's different wells across the county that we have selected because we can get good data off of those wells.
Can you get me the data that you have on the wells in 77386 zip code?
Yeah, I can. I gotta go, somebody's gotta go manually pull that out. Call the office, call our Lone Star office and ask them. I'm sure they can get that data for you.
Okay. Yeah, oh, by the way, ours, we have 3 wells. Well, we have 2 wells in the upper aquifer. We have one in the secondary and the Jasper down below it. The well water quality in the lower well has H2S in it. So that's our future. That's what we're looking at as far as water goes, because the upper well has gone down 50%. And we've lowered 100 feet. And we've lowered it once this past year, but the 2 droughts have decimated our wells.
Yeah, in the shallow aquifer, you're gonna have much more impact also than the deep rock. So it's just a fact.
But we're trying to maintain water quality and not have the H2S issue. So all of the people that live in this area, I'll be surprised that they don't see H2S when they go down to that lower.
The Jasper aquifer, the further south you get, the uglier it gets, period.
Yeah.
The further north you get, all of the aquifers get cleaner. So, it's just better water. But the problem is, you only have 2 really good aquifers to draw on in the southern part of the county. That's the Evangeline and the Chico. You get up north, you got 4 aquifers you can draw on.
I don't live up north.
I know, but I'm trying to explain.
I'm trying to solve our water issues in our district.
Yeah.
And we're landlocked, 1,500 homes. We're landlocked, we got districts all around us. We don't really have other options than to go deeper into poor quality. Yeah, I'm getting there.
That's a problem.
To poor quality.
It's a problem.
But our next hope, and we've looked at all the options y'all have talked about, the cheapest thing to do is to get the surface water from Lake Conroe. There's nothing cheaper than that. Unless you have a solution to tell me differently,
We don't have the solutions, but you may be right about that. But you may not be right about that. There may be other solutions. I don't know. The reality, though, is when you try to do drawdown in one small geographic area, it's pretty hard to do because you don't have control over who's drilled wells around you, which is going to affect your well wells.
We have 3 districts that are tied to each other, 4 wells total, servicing 6,000 homes. So it's not a small area.
I know, but
we're centered in the middle of that. And the thing is all of the wells, they've never lasted longer than 30 years.
Right.
And the thing is in this part of Montgomery County, you all are here talking about it. The subsidence you're talking about is not an issue of flooding, it's an issue of compaction because they work together.
Right.
And that compaction is it's not allowing the aquifer to recharge to maintain the operation of the well.
I wouldn't make that statement at all, but compaction does cause subsidence. There's no doubt about that.
It does do some, but it's not as big an issue here as it was in Bowling.
No doubt, but we have 2,400 permits in Montgomery County. 2,400 commercial well permits, big ones. And so you need to you and I are gonna solve this here.
Yeah.
My advice to you is come to the office. We'll try to get you whatever data you need, historical and right up to date, and see if there's something we can do for you to help you out.
Well, what we would like is a case to have the San Jacinto surface water. Like, we want surface water. We have to get surface water. And we want your help to do that.
Let me just say this again. I'm on the GRP committee, Mayor Melder.
Yes, sir.
We've had some mud districts, or I'll call it some other entities, come talk to us about getting water through the system that's there now. So, have y'all approached?
Yes.
This? Okay,
Yes,
you might be very well one of them.
We've been working on it for a year and a half.
Okay. When you say you've been working on a year and a half, have you presented and have we gotten back with you?
Nope.
Okay.
mean, we're 3 years away from getting surface water if we started tomorrow.
We're talking about on Monday, actually. Because we've had several other entities that have asked to.
You told us that.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your questions, but due to time constraints, I really would like to move on if possible. Anyone else have other questions?
I have all kinds of questions. I was getting some information, I don't need to be rude, about the San Jacinto River Authority. I'm fairly new to this area. I lived in Austin County for the last 40 years ago until 2.5 years ago. And I was aware of the water problem because I was on the planning commission for the city of Sealy. And they were already talking about building this big lake and having water for Richmond and Rosenberg, because they literally have to drive that water into those cities now because they didn't check to see what the water level was, and it just grew too fast. My concern is that I've been looking at taxes here in Montgomery County, and I love this area, I love the people, I love my subdivision. What I do not love is the San Jacinto River Authority charging me a tax at the end of the year after we've been paying all year for these things that is higher than my school tax. Okay, I was at a meeting a couple of years ago, it's kind of vague, I can't tell you exactly when Webb spoke about this situation and was explaining to us about the antitrust suit and everything, and I've just been informed it may be starting in January. My concern is we are getting taxed out the kazoo by the San Jacinto River Authority, and we do not get one drop of water. That water is going to Lake Conroe, and it is going to Lake Houston.
Okay.
And so our concern is, why are we still paying for it?
And I understand your question. Okay, so one of the first entities that I invited to this symposium was the SGRA. They originally agreed to come. Ed Shackelford was going to be our keynote speaker. They decided not to come. And I think they decided not to come for specific reasons. I have no idea what they are. Your concerns are valid. And you should give the SGRA a call and talk to them and find out why it is that you pay that tax, what the problem is, and how it can be resolved. I would love to answer that question. I would love for our panel members to answer that question. None of us are affiliated with the SGRA, we just can't. This symposium isn't really for that, and I would like them to be able to have an avenue by which they can talk to you directly, so it'll probably be better just to give them a
We've
call.
had a number of people from our subdivision call because it's just going up and up, and the appraisal thing where our houses have been valued far, far more than they're worth.
I understand,
It's all
yeah.
biting into us, and now, I don't know if you've read the papers recently, but it looks like with the stalemate that they had in the last special session, the appraisals are going to stay right where they are because our governor has said he will not give us that tax break until they put the vouchers in.
Yeah, again,
So
you know,
we're
no one's
upgrading.
here with the SGRA, we can't speak on their behalf. But I do appreciate your concerns. Webb Melder said he would visit with you after the symposium.
So the last time I tried to ask the SGRA, or Houston tried to ask, or Kingwood tried to ask them a question, the answer they got was, we have the authority, but not the responsibility.
Okay, well, again, you know, I would love to take comments regarding the SGRA, but they are not here.
I understand.
And I would really, really appreciate it if we could just discuss what's being done here and the individuals here. Any other
Why aren't they
questions?
here then?
I don't know why they're here. Maybe a call to them to find out would be
Just
a
making a point.
thing. I agree.
Hi, my name is Laura Hansen, and so just I want to kind of summation of tonight. So basically, we're saying that we need to find funding for these to make sure we are monitoring our levels now, not later. Then we also need to find some way right now to coordinate all these different entities that I am hearing about to build some sort of answer to it, whether it be desalinization, whether it be recycle, etc. Is that correct?
Yes.
What I'm
Yes.
saying, those two things are the main things that we need to get out of this. And then thirdly, I want to ask, well, now that you just told me that, I don't even know. So they passed that amendment about the water fund, but I was just looking at that, and I don't know if we qualify because we're too big, right?
Probably,
Okay.
but here's the issue. You know, you've already heard different people have different issues, and I can't solve those issues because I don't have the authority. I don't know how I can help you even with some of them. Love to. I can get you data, whatever data we have, but until we get, and this is the reason I want the SGRA left out of this, they're not here. And I think everybody on this panel agrees with me. They're not here, and we're trying to find a way to cooperate, not drive us further apart. Look, it's a secret to nobody that there's been a water war in Montgomery County, but that's getting us nowhere. And look, I don't care where you get your water. I just want you to be able to get it. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't think anybody here has a dog in the fight. So, but what we have to do is find a way to get past all this stuff. The courts are going to solve all these. They're going to work through all this stuff. They're going to come to a decision about what was right or wrong or whatever, which still doesn't leave us with a solution. It's up to us. We got to figure it out. We got great county officials. We got a state rep Ernest Bales, who showed up, is interested enough, came here. Thank you, Ernest. Appreciate you coming. Came here to listen to this. So we've got, Will Metcalf has been a huge help to us. Brandon Creighton, been a big help to us. Cecil Bell, been a big help to us. Lois Colcourse came up with some really interesting stuff the last time I saw her speak. So we have some interest. What we need are the citizens of this county to be calling those people and saying, what do we do? Help us figure out what to do. Maybe we can fix it at the county level. That would be the best of all worlds, if we could fix our county problem at the county level. We may need help with that. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure this out on my own. There are smart enough people in this county to figure this out. So.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, finally, I've got one final speaker, and he is in charge of economic development here in East County. Good man, intelligent, and can't give him a warm enough welcome. Frank McCready, East Montgomery County Improvement District.
And once again, Hank, thanks for hosting this and putting everyone together. Thank all of our panelists for being here today and our community input from our community and the things that are important to you guys. Many things are important from our perspective in regards to recruiting companies to move here, and resource uses and water usage is certainly an important aspect. If it doesn't meet the criteria that we're looking for, there's some great places. It's called Dayton and Cleveland. So we'll encourage them to go other places. We've never had a large water user come out to our industrial park. We've had numerous companies that do have an interest in being large water users, and we've not engaged with any of those companies in regards to coming here. Once again, I think the way that you address a lot of these issues is in partnerships. Commissioner Gray was just here, Greg Long, one of his staff members, was just here, and partnering together. One of the things you may or may not be aware of is governmental entities working together. So I'll leave this on a good note in regards to the splash pad that's at Bolsalis. Commissioner Gray came into office and identified there's about 9 million gallons a year that was running down the ditch. There was no recycling system in the splash pad. So again, it's just water that's going down the ditch. And from the perspective, there's about $1 million in above ground storage tank, is that right? Roughly? Give or take a little bit. So in working together with the Commissioner's Office, we've agreed to fund a recycling program with them. There will be a recycling system that will be installed, and Greg Long and Commissioner Gray were instrumental in that, working with the Improvement District. We agreed to share those expenses, and it's about $345,000. Each of us are going to fund that, saving our community about 9 million gallons of water a year. Secondly, the electrical usage, drawing the water through the pumps to circulate that water through the splash pad. Again, that was running about $13,000 and $19,000 a month. So again, those savings will come back to our taxpayers in the area. And once again, having governmental entities work together to resolve issues and provide a better product for our community is certainly very important. And with that, I'd like to say thank you all for being interested. Thank you for being engaged. Thank you for being here. And once again, our panel, I appreciate you guys taking your time to be here. And we don't always have solutions, but working together, I think we can come up with good things to move our community forward. And that's very important. So once again, thank you, Hank.
All right, that closes out the first Montgomery County Water Symposium. We're going to do this again. Hopefully all of the parties that are vested in water in Montgomery County will show up. I think we had some interesting conversation this evening. We touched on some interesting points. The point I'd like to drive home to each and every one of you is you need to be involved in your community. No other way to make this thing move forward. You got to be involved. Do what you can do. If you can vote, vote. If you can hold a symposium, do that. Do what you can do. Don't just sit back. It doesn't help. I hope you all have a good evening and a safe drive home. And thank you very much for supporting me and coming to this event.